Welcome back. It's the Better Learning Podcast. I am joined here with my co-host, Carla Cummins. Carla,
Hey.
What's going on?
Oh, gosh, nothing. I was just telling Brenda it's the end of the school year, right, here in Arizona. So we're getting geared up and excited. But otherwise, that's it.
Yeah. And Brenda, it's good to have you back. Brenda Swirczynski, she's with Pfluger Architects. She's been on the show before. It's always good to see you, Brenda.
Always good to see y'all. Thank y'all so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. So you picked Finding Nemo as the movie. So everyone should have seen that when they clicked on this one to listen to it. I want to start out right there. But why Finding Nemo?
That movie is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. It came out in 2003 in a very formative time in my life. I had just finished up my first round of being a classroom teacher, and I was a science teacher. I didn't want to be a science teacher. I was a reading teacher, and my principal said, well, I need you to teach either math or science. And so I flipped a coin because I did not like them equally. And it landed on science, and it completely changed my life. And so when Finding Nemo came out, of course, it was a huge hit, but I just found so many connections between science education and the movie and the messages. It was my first foray into the Pixar world too. So
very cool. Yeah.
I feel like it's one of the first Pixar movies that I can recall as well. Like if I think back about maybe Monsters Inc. was on Pixar, that's a good one
like
too,
Toy Story.
Yeah.
Which actually, I did catch there was like a little reference to Toy Story in there when I was rewatching it. Yeah. But it came out in 2003, which is interesting because you look at like the main people, Albert Brooks, main voice of Marlin the dad, and then Ellen DeGeneres, who I feel like that character got a lot of playtime and had a lot of humor, and Dory's character. Yeah. So this movie, I'm pretty sure I had seen it. I've at least seen like all the parts of it, but this was like rewatching it again was interesting.
All right, Dory. Let's go over this one more time. We know your memory's not the best.
Yep, can't remember diddly.
I know.
Can't remember squat.
That's right.
Diddly squat.
Diddly squat. Now, up, Dory, over here. Now listen to me. We need to ask for directions.
Directions.
But you gotta be low key.
Low key.
Because fish in this part of the reef, very skittish.
Skittish.
All right? You got that? You're sure?
Yeah.
You don't remember a word, do you?
Nope, nothing in my noggin.
Okay. Here's a brand new idea. You stay right here, swim in a little circle, forget to yourself. I'll be right back. I'm gonna ask for directions. Must keep thinking happy thoughts, happy thoughts, happy thoughts. Excuse me. Whoa. My friend and I need to get to the East Australian Current.
Sure, the EAC. Oh. It's in that direction. What you want to do is follow the...
There's another one, there's one. Boom. That's so much fun. Boom. They just move.
Brenda, I'm just going to tell you right now, I got really mad at this movie about 20 minutes into it. Watching it now.
Okay.
Should we jump right into that?
Yeah.
Carla, do you have any?
I don't know what he's going to say.
I got really mad at this. I really feel like it was, looking at it now, what I know and getting involved with education with schools, it was very much of like the adults and the parents were holding back the kid and saying, you can't do this. You can't do this. You're not allowed to do this. And I know like there's a little bit of the lesson learned at the end, but it was also almost like the dad was the hero of like, I saved you on there. So I don't know. I was talking to my kids about it on the way to school today, and I'm like, something's bugging me about this. But I was only about 20 minutes into the movie, so I had just stopped it when I'm like, no, I'm like, the kid went off on his own. I'm like, how could they have the movie where he goes off on his own for the first time and he gets fish napped?
Yeah.
Like right out of the beginning. I'm like, no, how could I do that? Now it just reinforces that like
the fear.
The world's scary. You can't do this on your own. Versus what we know in education, which is we want to encourage them to get out there. So it got better, but I was really mad at it this morning.
I think that's a good sign, though. I think that's one of the definitions of good art is a reaction, right?
Yeah,
An emotional reaction gets you kind of thinking about it. I think it's interesting, too, to think about when you see a movie yourself in your development and what you know, right? Younger versus older or whatever you're. When I saw it in 2003, I didn't really understand the hero's journey and the arc of that
right.
concept. And of course, now I see that very clearly. But I enjoyed it in different ways, depending, on when I watched it.
Well, and I was going to just say, like, depending on where you are at in life, right? What seat you're sitting in and what hat you're wearing really depends on what you're walking away with. And so, Kevin, maybe before you didn't necessarily look at it from an educational lens. You just looked at it as like, I'm watching this show with my kids or whatever it was. And so your takeaway in that you're holding kids back and you're emanating fear in them to be independent and nurture that the courage within them is different in the seat that you're sitting in today versus what you were sitting in if and when you first watched the movie.
Yeah, completely. I mean, coming out in 2003, I look back, I'm like, that was before I had kids. So now I'm looking at very much from like the parent perspective and what I know from education. And we've been there as parents of like, you come in and like the first day you're talking to the teacher and you'd be like, hey, just a heads up, they're really struggling with this or, and I'm like, that was, yeah. Like I'm already like setting the bar low for what they can actually accomplish.
Yeah.
Well, and I think back, like as I was watching it, I thought about, I have girlfriends who are helicopter parents, right? And, like I joke with one of my girlfriends, she's a bulldozer mom. It's terrible. But like that highly anxious parent who really tries to control what kids are doing might impact and affect what their experiences as they go along. Right. And so I think it's, an interesting movie to talk about.
I think it really personifies, well, it's a great example of a really great quote that my daughter's middle school principal would always say, we are here to prepare your child for the path, not to prepare the path for your child.
Yeah.
And that was something he would say all the time because he would, he'd say, kind of back off a little bit, slow down, let go a little bit, and your kiddos are going to be just fine. Trust us.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great quote.
I kind of like it too. I always joke I always say that there's a delicate balance to guiding versus hovering when it comes to parenting and when it comes to teaching. So how are you guiding them or how are you hovering?
My wife would always say too, like every Disney movie has to start with the mom dying. I know this isn't Disney, but in line with that, the kids' movies, there's a lot that I like that. And I started thinking about, I'm like, yeah, that is true. Like there are a lot where the mom dies.
Or there is no mom.
Right, right. Yeah. Now everybody's like, Cinderella, Snow White.
Aladdin.
Yeah. Bambi. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But what are any other things, Brenda, that for you that you wanted to hit up before we get into these award categories about the movie?
I think one of the things that really think about is all the different types of teachers, and we can get into that when we get to that John Keating Award. But there are many, many, I think, teachers in this movie beyond just obviously Mr. Ray. That was one of the things that I found was a gift rewatching this and thinking about it in this context was, wow, okay, there were so many people or animals along the way that really helped Nemo in very different ways. And they do characterize the very best types of teachers that are out there for kiddos. So we can get to that, but.
Cool. Yeah. Carla, anything?
No, I thought she summed it up. I just think we should go to John Keating because I'm interested.
All right, cool.
Because I got 3 good solid ones, to be honest. I think there were a lot, but there were several.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who did you guys have as candidates for this award?
Mr. Ray, who was teacher at the beginning for sure. He just exemplifies, the passion for discovering the world making them feel safe, but going on an adventure. He is ready to take them literally on top of his wings and protect them, but also take them on the journey of the ride. And then I think Gil for Nemo in the Tank is a fantastic example of a teacher who is the very opposite of what Marlin represents in Nemo's life, where Marlin is very sheltering. No, you can't do this. I mean, he literally says there are things you can't do. Gil says when he gets stuck in the pump, Gil says, "Everybody back off." He got himself in there. He can get himself out, and walks him through it. And what I really love about Gil is that when Nemo tries to explain, I can't do it because of my fin, he kind of turns around. He's like, yeah, I know, me too. And I think that is a really resonated with me because there were so many times as a teacher, my struggles, I was not a great student. I was not the A student in school, very much had some things to overcome. But when I recognized those in my students, I could relate to them on a completely different level than a teacher who was a high achiever and, did very well all the way through. So I'd say Mr. Ray, Gil, and then Dory is, I think, definitely up there, but I think we'll probably talk about Dory in other contexts. So I would also say Crash for the same reasons, but he just really introduces the love of life in going literally on that journey and just hopping on and just enjoying it. So those were kind of my top three.
Yeah, so I had Mr. Ray, obviously, right? And I thought he's super enthusiastic. He's like that teacher that you just love to love. But I do think in rewatching it, he was pretty oblivious to an individual student's needs, right? Like he was pretty oblivious to Nemo's challenges, which, to any teacher's credit, when you have that many kids, like, can you really focus on one kid, not to discredit him and his role, but that's it. Gil, obviously, like, I just love Crush, though. He's maybe my favorite character because I just think he's profound, and just the stuff he says is like, that's a cool guy. I want Crush to be like Matthew McConaughey's voice, but we'll get into that later. But
thank you for telling me. I said Crash. That's, I think, a different. Maybe that's Crush's cousin.
Yeah. Oh, it is Crush. No, it is Crush. Sorry, it's Crush the sea turtle, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I said it wrong.
Oh, did you? I was like, maybe I call him Crash. Like, whatever.
No, you're right.
He's a turtle. But I liked him too. But I think there's like Bubbles and Peaches. There's a bunch of them. There are a lot. There are.
Yeah, there were a lot in there. I think you guys hit a lot of the same ones that I had in there too. I did like how was it Mr. Ray? Was that what
Mr. Ray?
Mr. Ray, yeah, like the first thing is like they're exploring. Like that was the first thing. It's like, all right, we're gonna go exploring. I think my vote would be for Crush though, because they had that really cool interaction. Which again, he's maybe more a teacher of the parent, but having that parent interaction, which I feel like I've been having a lot of discussions like that lately too, of just like the parenting role and how we need to be like talking to more people about it and learning from other parents. And they had that interaction where it's like, how do you know when they're ready? And I think that's just like a really interesting topic right now. And I feel like there's some really interesting work going on right now that's more around parenting of what do we actually want for our kids, which I think once we can do a better job of defining that, it makes the school's job a lot easier, because I think a lot of times the parents are guiding the schools in the wrong direction. Yeah.
I think you bring up a good point that there really, I think, has been a shift from, we would always say in my experience as a public school teacher, you are the child's first parent. We're so happy to be with you on this journey, and we're partners. And I think over my 30-year career of teaching, I did see that shift a little bit. And I'm not sure it was for a bad reason, because when I first started teaching, we kind of dictated, you need to do this and this and this and this. And sometimes teachers, we do get a little bossy, and this is my way, this is the best way. been doing it like this and had lots of success. And I'm not sure that was the best way for dialogue back and forth necessarily. On the other hand, there are sometimes I think where logic might sometimes override maybe thinking about the best way to approach it with the correct and best pedagogy as far as coming from a parent point of view, as exemplified by Marlin, right? That's not what Nemo needed at the time. He was really not at that point anymore. Whereas before, when he was younger, yes, protecting him, helping him understand, how to use his lucky fin in the best, way that he could. So I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, that kind of dynamic relationship there.
If we move on to the cliques, like what are some of the stereotypes or groups that we see in this movie? I think there's a lot. I mean, that whole journey through, you kind of just see different groups. What were the ones that you guys had notes on?
My favorite group is still the aquarium group. I thought that was so interesting the way they had the characters just interact in this. And I was thinking again about the environment all through this, again, watching it now in its different lens. But when Nemo first gets into the aquarium, he thinks he's in the ocean. So he starts swimming around and keeps bumping into the glass. And I think that's really interesting kind of metaphor for being in environments that are a little bit more stifling than what you're used to. And then, slowly these others come out, and they each have dealt with being in that environment in different ways. There's, was it Flo, her sister Flo? She has this kind of split personality and hiding in the little helmet there, and he would come out every once in a while, being fascinated by just the bubbles. So I think that was really interesting. And then, of course, those three little friends with Nemo at the beginning at school, best one-liners ever. I'm H2O intolerant. I'm obnoxious. Those are classic lines.
Yeah, those are good
Yeah, my notes on that were you had like the school of fish kids, right? So you had all the different I don't know if you'd call it demographics, but the mix of personalities. So the teasers, the followers, the explorers, you had everyone depicted in that. I mean, I guess as you would instead of like being in real life with 2 feet and you had fins. And then I called it the tank gang. It's just like a quirky group that reflects, a collaborative environment where everyone brings something unique to it. And they all seem, to contribute to problem solving in one way or another. But those were the two that I kind of walked away with in terms of scenes and cliques and things like that.
Yeah, I had really similar. Brenda, I think that was really interesting when you think of like that aquarium, that tank group of, in a lot of ways, that's kind of like the classroom. You were like stuck in it. It's not like the real world. And then and even at the end, when they get out, they're kind of floating around in bags and you're like, now what? But it was really cool seeing them work together though. And then, kind of taking it to the next level once they got out. Awesome. All right, class clown. Who stole the show? I mean, I'm just going to say right up front, it felt like Dory stole the show, and the fact that they even like made a sequel around Dory in there. Did you guys agree or have anyone else to consider there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so hard to not think of her right away. And again, I kind of thinking about a teacher. She's a great teacher in a different way. That classic viewpoint of, okay, I have these problems. I don't remember things, but I'm just gonna keep going and come on, let's do it. And yeah, she's amazing.
I had Bubbles and Peaches. I feel like they they steal the show a little bit in the tank scene. And then too, like I think Crush. I think he I don't know about class clown, but I do think when you're looking at that person who sort of steals the show, he also was one of those.
Yeah.
I feel it's kind of obvious that we need to say Marlin because of that whole discussion. You're a clownfish. You're funny, right?
Yeah,
Tell us a
that's
joke.
true.
I
Yeah.
did think about that, and I was like, okay, we might need to just say Marlin. And then he tries to tell that joke at the beginning, and it's so awkward.
I know.
It's terrible. No.
Yeah. Was there a homecoming scene or like an iconic moment in there? I was thinking, probably the escape scene for me. That was the one of like where they were working together, build up, and a lot of tension in there of how do they get Nemo out of the tank and into the ocean. Other ones, there's probably some other ones that I can throw in there too. But do you guys have any there?
I was thinking about this one. I don't have, there were just, again, with that hero's journey and that arc, it's almost cyclical where he's just moving from one thing to another and then he comes back again. So it's hard for me to pick out just one. How about you, Carla?
No, I think the drop off field trip scene was one. And then Nemo swimming out to touch the boat, right? Or
You mean the butt?
The butt. I said boat. The boat. The butt. I mean, I think that was a symbolic moment, right? Pushing boundaries, craving autonomy, those types of things. And there could be several, even the scene where Crush is introduced, where they're all coming through, the turtles all come through.
Like the EAC, I think is what they. Well,
yeah, I can't remember what
East Australian Current.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that there's that too, right? Like where you can get swept up and carried away real quick, depending on the way that you see it. So there were a couple.
Yeah,
that's a good.
The other one I thought of that was when kind of that hero's journey by the end of like, I can do it. And he's like, we just he had to get all the fish to swim down so they can get out of that net.
That's right. Yeah.
That I'm like, that was pretty good too.
Like, that's true.
He was now able to do it. And his dad first, like finally trusted him. Like, okay, like you can do it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right. One-liners. There's a lot of one-liners.
I didn't get that many.
You didn't get that many? I have a few notes in there.
I
think Brenda's already mentioned a couple. I don't know if that's what do you have, Brenda? What's your favorite?
Well, just that, I'm H2O intolerant, and then the other ones that I'm obnoxious. That just those make me giggle every single time. I'm trying to think of what other ones I was kind of thinking about. And yeah, go ahead, Kevin. I'm sure you've got
I had one when Dory was trying to talk whale, and and he says, like, that's not whale, it's more like upset stomach.
That was a good one.
Yeah, there are a few more like kind of deeper lines in there, so I wouldn't say they were like the funny ones, but I'm just looking through the rest of my notes, see if there's anything else that I had.
Where you have to go with the like, just keep swimming, right? Like that's the ultimate mantra of all of it. And I mean, in life, it kind of is. Not to interrupt you, there was one, it was fun, the funny one. I wrote down, fish are friends, not food.
Yes, that one. That's great.
Like, it's kind of like, you can pick your nose and you can't pick your friend's nose type of thing. And then I had the Crush one where he's like, because we're like, whoa. And you were like, whoa. And we were all like, whoa.
Yeah,
that's good. A great one.
But, I mean, just the wisdom about being present and going with the flow. I mean, that was a good one.
Yeah. I'm so glad, Carla, that you brought up the just keep swimming, of course, because I was in a work meeting just yesterday and that came up. Somebody said, oh, they were like, how y'all doing? Just like, just keep swimming. And I just was like, I can't, that is just in our, it's in our culture now. I mean, 2003, that's been, a long time. And it's still something that just kind of helps keep you going. And your little Dory's right there. It's like, okay, I think that's pretty amazing, pretty impactful.
Well, the number of times it's said and it's turned into a song and it's all throughout the movie.
All right, realistic or ridiculous? Moments in here where they were very realistic, or moments where like totally ridiculous.
I mean, do we even want to just start with fish don't talk? Like,
yes, they do, Carla. Come on. You just don't speak fish.
I always think if my dogs could talk, I wonder what they would say.
I do think the interaction between the pelican, the pelican when he flew into the dentist's
Oh
window
yeah.
and he like comes over there and talks to the fish, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Because when he first meets Nemo, he says, "Sorry if I've snapped at you before, but birds got to
Yeah.
eat." And it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
predator-prey relationships and friendships.
When we work with schools at K-12, it's not just about furniture or design. It's about impact. Our radically student-centered approach puts students at the center of every decision. From that first conversation to the final walkthrough, we're focused on creating spaces that actually work for the kids, the teachers, and the community. So if you're looking to do more than just check a box on your next project, let's talk. Visit K12.com. That's KAY-TWELVE.com and see how we're helping schools transform learning one student at a time. Because at K-12, it's not just about projects and furniture, it's about purpose. I mean, I'll go into just the realistic, like we've talked about. There is a lot of real stuff in here about parenting and teaching and doing that, and I think some of those interactions of like when Marlin says to Dory, he's like, "I promised him I wouldn't let anything happen to him," and she goes, "Huh, that's a funny thing to promise. You can't never let anything happen to him. Then nothing would ever happen to him." Pretty real. And not to get too dark on here, like not to get too real in this conversation, but sometimes I've felt this way, especially when we're talking architecture and in schools, is a lot of times you'll hear people say safety is our number one priority.
Hmm.
And I know it's not like something like people want to say like, no, it's not, but there's a big piece of me in the back that's like, no, it shouldn't be our number one priority. Like, I get it. Like, safety is a big priority, but remembering, like, what are we trying to do? We're trying to set up kids for success for when they're older, and
Yeah.
to say like safety is the number one priority is, I think we're lying to ourselves when we say that.
So it's funny that you say that, Kevin, because I wrote Marlin's fear mirrors how schools and parents sometimes limit risk taking to keep kids safe, but real learning happens through experience. So that was like when, and I just, sorry, because I take my chicken scratch and I write it down, but realistically, like, I mean, kind of along the same lines of what you're saying is that sort of fear of keeping people safe and the responsibility of someone else's kids and the responsibility that happens when you relinquish your children to go to school from a school standpoint sort of hampers sometimes what experiential learning is.
I think that's a really, really interesting kind of thing to think about. I think about safety. I try to really think about safety when we talk about it with school design and so forth, not just that hardening of the space too, but also thinking about psychological safety,
Right.
right? And it gets to your point, Carla, of there's a point where if we shelter Nemo too much, that's not safe for him. That's not appropriate either. And so thinking about safety in all forms that it is. And again, that's that kind of preparing your child for the path and not the path for the child. But I think that's a great point.
The other realistic, so Brenda, you'll feel better about this when I turn around. I actually like teared up at the end, especially when like he's hugging Nemo and then Nemo says like, "Dad, you can let go." I mean, that was literally this weekend. My middle daughter turns 13 today, and
Oh,
I was hugging her, and she like literally said the same thing to me, like, "Dad, you can let go now," and I'm like, "Oh man." So
I'm
as
glad she lets you hug her.
well, she doesn't let me.
yeah.
Feels more like a tackle than a hug, I guess.
Yeah.
It'll come back around. I'm sure but it'll come back around. Yeah.
Yeah, I did also write too. Like the dynamics of overprotection, student independence, and peer collaboration are pretty spot on in the movie. While talking fish is just incredibly unrealistic, or jumping to tanks, or getting fish napped, or like whatever the heck we want to talk about, right? but those aspects of it are very real.
I will say, when I was looking at research, preparing for this, I was curious, being a science teacher, how realistic, if we were going to poke holes in it as, oceanographer or a
Yeah.
biologist, but it stands up pretty well. They did a lot of research to get the environments right, the relationship outside of the character, the talking animals, but the relationships, the current was a little, it doesn't go quite that fast, but just to even introduce that concept
Yeah.
of that there are currents of water, and also in the up in the atmosphere there are currents of that. I thought that was, thinking about it in that way, I thought that was really quite impressive and clever. If you look at the markings of the different species, they're very detailed. Although I will say sharks don't hunt in packs like that interspecially. So,
Brenda, I'm impressed you went that far.
I
I
know,
mean, here I
that's
am
awesome.
thinking
Oh.
about the movie plot line, right? Like, I didn't check
Well-
if there was an Australian current
yeah.
or how cold it was. I'm impressed.
Well, and that's also teacher mode, because I could never go on vacations or go anywhere without thinking and taking pictures of, oh, there's a perfect example of erosion. Let's take this picture, and it's just like, and then that was before, the internet could just give us any experience we, wanted to show, or a picture we wanted to show at the time. But so I'm used to kind of looking out for those things, so the kids are already interested in this and it's accurate. Yes.
Yeah. Should we move on to the iPhone effect? All right. So this was made today. What would the technology be different? What would be different?
Nemo would
little
have
over
a
20 years ago.
microchip. I mean, what are we
Yeah.
talking about? We tie an
Yeah, I
air
mean,
tag on Nemo.
Yeah, there's some AirTag that have some type of tracking device on.
Not that
on
fish have
them,
cell phones,
GPS.
but it would definitely for sure be something.
Yeah.
Carla, when you said that, I immediately, I don't know if you've watched the Black Mirror series, but it's always about how technology that could be available in about maybe 5 years goes awry, how it might be used, but how it could go awry. And so when you say that about microchipping, it's just like it could go dark fast.
Oh. So I haven't seen it, but people keep talking about it, and I keep thinking,
Yeah, that's a good one. Those are really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like separate movies every episode.
Yeah.
Totally different characters, totally different line.
I just don't want to change Finding Nemo and update it in any way. I really resist thinking about that in that way, because I just think it's just perfect as it is. And I think if someone did try to do an updated one, I would just be really protesting that.
I'm like, I can't imagine that any cartoon type show, I can't think of anywhere cell phones were even in the storyline. Like if you think about it, or even some technology, right? Like what I can't think of any.
I feel like it's one of the advantages of like why you can do a movie that way, is that you could remove it from the rest of reality. Like if you did this as live action, and now it'd be hard to do it without having cell phones and technology
Well, and I
part
think
of that storyline.
the fish aspect of it too complicates the technology portion, although cell phones
Yeah.
are waterproofs now.
Yeah. I think the tracking component of it, which I think adds like a really cool storyline in there of just how that legend kind of made its way through the ocean too, of like the power of storytelling, of like everyone just shared it and it immediately got around. It's almost kind of like the way it used to be before social media and trending and everything else would happen. Like that's how like you would hear about stories, and that's how you'd hear about it from your friends.
Yeah,
I do. I was just thinking though, kind of going away from the creepy microchipping, Marlin putting microchip in Nemo to keep on track of where he is. But I do think about scientists and how far that technology has come, and how tracking is a huge part of the way that we learn about ecosystems, especially in the ocean. I'm addicted to the Nautilus video where the scientists go down with their remote robot submersible, and they go down, to the very depths that we've ever been to, and they just, you can hear them talking about what they're seeing on the screen. And it's fascinating to me. I mean, to be able to see things we've never been able to see before. I guess in that way, that could be pretty neat if there was a, an updated version of, what could we see in completely different worlds that we've never been to.
Well, too, and like how do I mean the ocean? Just note, anyone who doesn't know me, the ocean is my biggest fear. Biggest fear, because you just don't know, right? You just don't know where that's going to go. But when you look at tagging animals and things like that, the amount of ground that's covered and the amount of learning that happens, and to be able to know like migration, right? Nothing, we wouldn't know migration if it didn't happen and that there wasn't that science behind it. So I'm into the microchipping. Go watch Black Mirror.
That's the good of the technology. That's the other side of Black Mirror, right? we got the good part of technology.
Yeah.
But,
well, so the next one is, sorry, Kevin.
I was going to say, go for it.
Because I have a good one, and maybe it was from your LinkedIn post this morning, but The Substitute.
Yeah. Who would you
your head.
recast? Who would
Mr.
be in these
Ray,
roles?
Jack Black.
That's a good one.
Like, and Kevin posted something this morning on LinkedIn about, because he did School of Rock, right? And maybe that's where it came from. I don't know, but I just think he would be the perfect Mr. Ray, and like he would completely rock the like school field trip hype man role.
Yeah, 100%. That's perfect.
Yeah. I think you already said one too, Crush. You can have McConaughey in there.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Oh, I could hear his voice. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, being animated, I feel like you can have so many in the Marlin role for sure.
Steve Carell.
Steve Carell would be good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other one I had was Gil, the Idris Elba. He would be a great Gil.
Yeah, he would. But I still just, Willem Dafoe. I mean,
you can put in a lot of substitutes in when you're doing just the animated ones. So if we go hags, if you're going to just like, what would be the comments written in the yearbook for this movie? What are the lasting things? I think, I mean, you guys brought it up here of like, just keep swimming. I feel like that's a huge theme in there. I'm going to look through my notes if you guys have any other ones too.
I mean, I would have definitely called Nemo like Lucky Finn. Like I would have renamed him something for sure. I don't know. But this one is always a hard one for me. Yeah,
I that's all I could think about was, just keep swimming. And it's just that iconic line. Yeah, that was kind of hard too. I was actually looking through my yearbook. It just went all out here. And it was just like, stay cool, never change. No, that one was always funny to me. It's like, never change. Don't ever change. Be who you are at 15. You're ridiculous, funny, just class clown. That's awesome. Stay the same. That'll take you far. Oh yeah.
Stop, Brenda.
I was
picture this.
Trouble.
I mean, I would definitely be like, hey, fish are not food.
Fish are friends.
Not food.
Yeah. All right. So where are they now? 20 some years later, where's Nemo? I can see him being some type of like tour guide where he takes everyone like
I feel like he's like a anthropologist, like just discovering and sharing cultures of the ocean with others. Also being an advocate for travel and discovery despite your so-called limitations. Experiencing things no matter what, just because you have a lucky fin doesn't mean you can't go all across the ocean and, meet all kinds of fascinating new cultures and creatures. So I think he would be like maybe a travel guide, anthropologist, sociologist kind of mix.
That's funny. I put Ocean Exploration Club leader, but like travel guide would be great.
And Mr. Ray did say, that formative first year of fish school, he said, we're explorers. Let's go explore, so I like that piece of it too, that maybe the teacher kind of set the tone for it a little bit, and then, you know, he grew up
Yeah.
to be exactly that.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like that happens a lot too. It's like the kid ends up kind of the exact opposite of what the parents
Yeah.
try to do. Like if you try to hold them back, well, then they're going to rebel and go the total opposite way. Yeah. Well, this is a good one. There were a lot of, yeah, there were a lot of just good life lessons in this movie with a lot of good humor. And yeah, yeah, it was a good one. I'm glad you brought this one up, Brenda.
Yeah, I
That's
was
good.
surprised it was, it was one that hadn't been done yet. And so I was thrilled to go back into it. And it is fun. It is fun to learn from something that taught you something when you were in, like I said before, in a completely different stage of your life, and you can still learn from it. I think that again is a hallmark of some great art and great storytelling too. So, and I
Yeah.
appreciate y'all bringing that full circle as well. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good transition into real world stuff too, of like Brenda coming from the education side, now moving to Pfluger Architects. Like, fill us in. What's the latest? What are the things you're working on? Things that you're excited about?
So I've been at Pfluger now. I retired after 30 years in education last summer. So this I've been at Pfluger a couple of years and serving as a planner, and everyone goes, what is that exactly? And so my hope was to continue supporting teachers and students in a different role. So I still wanted to keep doing that no matter what I did after retirement, and that's really gave me a great opportunity to do that. So my favorite things are being that bridge between the design world and the education world, even though the education world is changing so quickly on so many different fronts. I find that to be just fascinating and so inspiring. When I work mostly with districts in the state of Texas, just to see the amazing things that are being done despite challenges and outside of the box thinking, and just the commitment to, the vision that they have set forward for their community and their students. It's inspiring. And I appreciate having a deep root of experience in my school district that I was at for most of my educational career. And in this role, being able to see so many different types of applications in public education, and then helping to design for whatever project they have in mind. So
Can I
it's been a blast.
can I ask you a question, Brenda? So you obviously were a classroom teacher, right? Was that just
Correct.
your entire career? You were a classroom teacher.
Yeah. So I taught for 3 years, and as I mentioned, I hated science and I hated
Yeah.
math. I did not see myself as being something that I could do. But after having taught, it was fifth grade science, so let's just not get too excited about that. I was looking at the
I
textbook.
I see our third graders' homework, and I'm
Well,
pulling out ChatGPT a lot.
this was early 90s, so we still had textbooks. So I was like literally reading the chapter, and I was a brand new teacher. But over the first 3 years that I taught, I, like Mr. Ray, had a lot of enthusiasm, and I started to get that spark and started to believe what I was telling the kids of, you can do anything you want to. You want to be a scientist? Let's be scientists. Come on, let's go. And I got in that mindset so much and got inspired from my kiddos so much that I actually, after 4 years of teaching, I decided this little elementary school reading teacher with specialization was going to get her master's in science to be a scientist. I mean, that's how green and naive I was. And so I went back to grad school and finally found a program that would take me with my non-science background, and got my master's in environmental science and did field work, and it just completely changed my world. I did a lot of work in nonprofits with Botanical Research Institute. I did a lot of informal education where we would do conservation education and things like that. Went back to teaching, did some adjunct work, went back to teaching, and then wrapped up my last 10 years in public education as a science coordinator for my district that I had first taught in, which was very satisfying.
Well, yeah. So I guess I asked the question and mind you, I didn't know this whole went back to school to get like a master's in science. How impressive is that? So you're on your third career in theory, but how do you make that jump from, let's just say, the other two to being a planner? Like where did that come from?
Yeah, no, I'm happy. In education, we always talk about mentors and people that have helped you along your path. So I'm always happy to share my story as well, because people do want to know that. They're like,
Yeah.
what even made you think of that? And one was, yes, I believe that you can do whatever you want to do. You really can, and you just, why not try it? But really when I was science coordinator in my district, I would walk my campuses and we would have new buildings that would be built, and I would be on the charrette as the science coordinator, and they would ask my input on the science labs or what they might need in, the collaborative areas. And I was fascinated by that design process and excited by this high level of design and conversation that was happening in these meetings. And then I was there long enough to see these projects come to fruition, and would walk into the campus and see the spaces that we had talked about being used in very innovative ways, not at all being used that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that's not a new concept for people in the design world, but I started to see that enough where I thought, what is missing here? There's a link that's missing, and we've tried to bring in all the voices that we can, but what's not happening here? And so that got me really interested in thinking about how I can add value to that process, either in my role as science coordinator or understanding more about the process on all levels that didn't even necessarily involve me. That's the other thing, Carla, is I'm not afraid to ask questions. And, I'm not afraid for people to say, I don't need to talk to you about that. That's not that's not really in your realm. I'm like, okay, I was just curious, but just being curious about it. And so I found a architect that was working with us in our district, Irene Negaglione, who is
one of my all-time favorite people.
Yeah, she's just amazing. And I just asked her to coffee, and I said, hey, I'm so impressed with how you are leading us in our design work. And I'm just so curious if there was someone like me later when I get ready to retire in a few years, could an educator add value to this on the other design side? And so she served as a mentor to me,
Mm-hmm.
and took the time to introduce me to A4LE, where I started to go to the conferences, and then
Got your ALIP.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went through the Advanced Academy, and I didn't know if this was going to work out, but I just kept on swimming and asking questions, and found so many amazing, generous, gracious people who were happy to talk with me. And so, and so here I am. So
Yeah.
it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I think that perspective is so valuable. I mean, we talk about all the time of within our K-12 team of like, don't forget the educators and the students' viewpoint, and the educators know it better than anyone of like what the kids actually need. And yeah, so I think the perspective that you can bring to that, it's why like we have a lot of former educators on our team too. It's kind of amazing how many times in our industry we've seen it happen when there isn't, that voice isn't well represented in the design team.
Well, and I think too, you have an opportunity sometimes within a role, right? So say you're director of science, or, your previous role, where if you have an understanding of the intention behind the space, you can connect the dots and you can propel your school to really utilize it the way that it was intended, and kind of change some of the outcomes and experiences that happen within that. And you, in a new role sitting in the facility planning seat, can talk to it different, in the very beginning than probably most people can, on how do you implement certain things within your classrooms or within your school system or your overall environment, right? That a lot of people can't. And two, how can you connect with them?
And I think y'all bring up great points of having student and teacher input is super important, but they don't have all the answers either because they only know what they know. And so, there's that famous quote that Henry Ford said, if I had asked what people wanted, they would want a faster horse, right?
Yeah.
And we would have never had the automobile. And a lot of times when we talk to teachers, they are so in the mode of problem solving with what they have, it's difficult for them to kind of pull back and see the big picture of what could be. And so a lot of times, they'll say more restrooms, more storage. And so it's like, okay, we got that. Let's, what else? What else and what else? And so, and also I think with the time frame that they're on, it's just the pace is so fast and there's so much to do. So I think those voices are important, but I think it's also important to take some time and take a beat to build those relationships and build that trust that, yes, as designers, we know some things that we would like to, share with you as well as we want to learn from you both ways. So that's why I always say I'm like a bridge. I hope at my very best day that I can be a bridge to help both sides kind of see the other's perspective.
I always say, like, our biggest asset in life is people, right? I mean, one person can change your path and you don't recognize, and one person can change your path in good and one person can change your path in bad too, right? Yeah. The relationships that we have are so important in everything that we do. And just one question can lead you down a road that you just sometimes never realize, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
Yep.
And what I love about this industry too is that there is so much on that education side that people want to help. Like people want to help. Like I think a lot of times, especially younger in your career or really at any stage in your career, you feel like, oh no, they're too busy. They wouldn't give me that time. To your point of if anyone would call up any of us and be like, yeah, of course. Like that, we've received so much of that and we want to give it back. And yeah, I've always loved mentorship relationships and I've been part of a couple of organizations.
That's one of your favorite things too.
Yeah. I mean, I've been ones where it's more formalized. So it's like actually like a formalized mentorship for a year where I've had mentors for 15 years and then I mentor other people. And I always say I get as much or more out of mentoring other people. I learned so much from that. So people who feel like they can't ask for help or want to get that opportunity to learn from other people are craving it. Like I can't stress that enough. Like, pick up the phone, make the ask, because it doesn't happen as often as I think other people think it happens.
Yeah. And I always say too, people want to see you succeed, right? And I can't imagine that, you would ever have someone ask you a question and you look at them and be like, yeah, I'm not going to meet with you. No, because ultimately you want people to succeed in just the same way as you want to get that same support or that same, the same aspect from someone else if you were to ask that question. But I just think there's fear, right? We're all afraid to have someone reject us in those questions or that ask, right? That we're sometimes too afraid to ask for that support.
Look at Dory. She went totally across the ocean just because someone asked for help.
No, it's because she forgot what she was doing.
I was just thinking that. I was thinking she went and talked to a whale. I mean, it's like...
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Well,
so awesome. Well, this is fun. It's always good talking to you, Brenda.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. For the listeners, if you have not already subscribed, wherever you're listening, watching to this, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, at betterlearningpodcast.com, just hit subscribe, add comments, give us feedback. We really do look at that and we talk about it in all our planning meetings. When we get that feedback, we go through it. And, if you want to be a guest on the show or have suggestions of guests or movies, please put that on there. We really do take that to heart and it directs future episodes. So Brenda, it's always great talking to you. I'm sure we'll talk here of where we can meet up again. And Carla, it's always great to spend some time with you. So thank you both.
Yeah. Thank y'all so much for putting this on. It's a wonderful resource.
The Better Learning Podcast is produced by Matt Rogers and edited by Kelly Jones. The views and opinions shared on this podcast are those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily represent the perspectives of their affiliated companies, organizations, or associations.